Bonjour, donc on va démarrer la dernière conférence de la journée. Donc avec la brasserie Brixton, donc située en Londres, en Angleterre, et donc avec Jazz, un des fondateurs de la brasserie, voilà, qui va vous présenter. Donc la conférence est en anglais. Donc si jamais il y a des personnes qui ne comprennent pas, levez la main. Je suis là pour vous aider, pour traduire, si jamais il y a des petits soucis de compréhension. Voilà. I will be translating. If someone struggles to understand you, I'll be there for the translation. So.
Bonjour, Paris. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Thank you for coming to hear about Brixton and our brewery. I've met a few of you already trying our beers, and I wanted to introduce not only the brewery but also the place that we originate from, because I think you'll come to see when you look at this presentation, and perhaps if you pick up a can, that the character of the brewery is the place, and it's a very special place. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good, good start. So Brixton is the only B word I'm going to be saying today. There is another B word which is in everyone's minds as well. Ends in IT, a bit like SHIT. But I'm just going to talk about Brixton today. And has anyone visited Brixton? Has anyone been there? Good. Someone at the back, couple at the front. Good. If you look at our logo, you'll notice two things. LDN for London. So Brixton is a place in South London, and you'll also notice SW9. So SW9 is the area or the postcode for Brixton, Southwest 9. And Brixton, over the last 100 years, has been through many changes, like a lot of different areas. In the late 19th century, it was very popular with Victorian rich people. There were lots of theatres. There was a very famous supermarket there called Bon Marché. You might have heard of it. So we have a French connection already with Brixton. And it changed a lot. It then became famous in the 1940s after the Second World War, for a lot of people arriving from Jamaica, and it still has that strong connection with Africa, the West Indies, and that gives it a lot of its identity and character. So those people came to Brixton to rebuild London after the Second World War, after all the bombing. But let's not have a history lesson on the Second World War. I think it's more interesting to give you a history lesson on how Brixton Brewery was born, and how we came to open a brewery there, and our journey that's brought us to France for the first time today. So like a lot of brewing origin stories, it's home brewers who start on a very small scale, and this is the first beer that we made here. So this is Mike, who is one of the other founders of the brewery. And the reason that we met, which was, gosh, when was it? 2010, almost 10 years ago now, is we both moved to Brixton around the same time because we wanted somewhere to live and start a family in London. And Brixton had quite a bad reputation. No one wanted to live there. People were scared of the area, for stupid reasons. There had been some riots in the 1980s, and because it had a West Indian community, basically white Londoners gave up on it, and they said, we'll go and live somewhere else. But we didn't feel that way. We thought, that's just stupid, because it's such an amazing, special melting pot of different cultures and food and everything. So we were quite relieved that other people didn't want to live there, because it meant we could afford to live there. So that was great. And we started a family independently of each other, myself and my wife, Libby, who is on the stand now. And she speaks French, so if you have any things that you want to ask, she grew up in Montreal, so she's francophone, which is very helpful for coming to Paris. And so we moved there, and we had our first child, Joseph. He's now 8 years old, and Mike and his wife, Xochitl, had their first baby, Saskia, and we were in a bar one day in Brixton having a drink. I think it was a pint of Amstel. This was before craft beer was very widely available in London. So things have changed a lot in Brixton, things have changed a lot in beer. And my wife Libby and Xochitl, you know, looking at each other's babies. And anyway, we started a friendship. And we realized it wasn't just meeting in the bar. We actually lived as neighbors across the road. But in London, you leave early in the morning, you come back at night, you don't really see anyone. So we didn't realize they were living there for 4 years. We were there the same time, and we didn't even meet once. So it took 4 years within, like, from here to the end, living before we met them. But anyway, that was a good meeting. And I made a joke with Mike because the flat that he was living in, when I was looking for a flat, I'd been there, I'd looked at it, and I said to him, I've been in your bedroom. And he's like, what do you mean you've been in my bedroom? And I'm like, yeah, I tried to rent the same flat as you. So anyway, he thought I was, you know, I think someone needs to translate that joke. But anyway, so yeah, 1 year later, we were having another drink, and I said to Mike, breweries are appearing all over London. Maybe we should open one in London as well. And we were both massive champions of Brixton as an area. We liked it that other people didn't like Brixton. We thought, that's okay, because that means we can try and change their minds and educate them and tell them what a special place it was. And we thought a nice way to do that would be with beer. So the first thing we did was get the domain name. And we were quite surprised that it was available, because London was becoming known for breweries. I think at that time there were 25 breweries. So now there's over 100, but the next thing we did, okay, that was easy. Buying a domain name, very, very easy. The hard part was trying to make beer. So the first thing we did was on the internet, we bought a kit, and it came with a tin. You open the tin, pour it in a pot, boil it up, and then you ferment in a cupboard. And this is us drinking that first beer. And we also thought, if we're going to open a brewery, we need to pretend that we know what we're doing. So our wives had these t-shirts made, and they said Brixton Brewers. And, you know, it's like actors, you know, they have to, you know, pretend, and they have to method acting, you know, they have to. So this was our method acting. And we graduated, so we were in the kitchen. We got kicked out of the kitchen because of the smell and the mess and that kind of thing. And this is making beer in the garden. You can see the kids are a bit older. So, and the size of the batches was getting a little bit bigger. So this was 40 liters of beer, which was huge for us then. Yeah. So that was fun, doing that. And then we thought, okay, so we have a name, we have some recipes, but there's a big piece missing, and that was an identity. So what we did is I asked a friend of mine who was a graphic designer, can you make an identity for our brewery? And she was pregnant and about to have a baby, and she said no. She said, I'm too busy. And I thought, So what I did is I hired another designer who got jealous. No, the one with the baby got jealous, and she thought, actually, I do want to make a design for you. And she came up with a very, very clever idea to represent the area. When you go to Brixton, we have these markets, and you see all around the market these kind of fabrics, African batik fabrics. And she said, why don't we use that as the identity for the brewery, but create our own designs? So this is one of our designs, which is in that same style. And every design we do is pretty much the same way. But instead of choosing African fabrics, we actually choose places in Brixton. And I'll come on and tell you a little bit more about that, each of the beers. So this was a home brew that we made from that kit there. And this was the early identity of the brand. And I thought, more method acting. So I went to work. I still had a real job. And I put it on a label, used the color printer at work, and we put the labels on the bottles. And I thought, okay, now this is starting to feel a bit more real. So anyway, at some point, the talking needs to stop and the action needs to start. So we needed to find a home for the brewery. And if you've visited London, there's a lot of railway lines going through London. And underneath the railway lines, you have arches, which are quite cheap to rent, normally mechanics or things like that, but also quite mini cabs, exactly. But they're also quite suitable for brewing because they have very, very big walls, and it keeps everything quite cool, and it's ideal for brewing. So this is the railway arch that we rented. This is Mike, and it's a little bit bigger than it looks in the picture, but not much bigger. It's smaller than this area here, and we thought we need to prepare the railway arch for a brewery. And everyone kept saying to us, oh, it's very important to have a very strong floor. But the problem is, we didn't have any money for a very strong floor. So what we did is we got some paint, and originally it was red. So we got this gray paint, painted the floor, took the whole weekend. Within 3 months, no paint left at all gone, completely disappeared. And this was our original drain, because that's another important thing in brewing, is all the water to drain away. But the problem was, it went uphill. So the water, instead of going here, went that way. So we were always pushing water around the brewery. But anyway, we made it work. This was our first brewery here. So you can see the drain and the original fermenters. And this was after the first beer that we made. We cleaned everything, and we were happy. We were tired, we were exhausted, but we were very happy. We were off the ground and ready to release our first beers. No more method acting. This was the real deal. No dress rehearsal. This was where it all began. And we thought we need to launch the brewery with a party. So we were preparing the railway arch. So this is another thing you see around Brixton, is these baskets, African-style baskets. So we thought, okay, that's going to be for the lights in the brewery. But we didn't have really any way of getting up high enough. So you can see we're all like supporting the ladder. Mike was the lightest, so he got the job of going to the top. And we were a bit worried when we opened the brewery and we had the party that no one would turn up. We were like, maybe this was a big mistake, maybe we're going to regret it. But this is the opening party. This is about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so there's people everywhere. We ran out of beer, and we always like to say, since then we've been trying to catch up for the last 5-6 years. So it's gone really well. We started, quite modest, and we still have quite a modest brewery in London, but as part of the expansion, we wanted to bring our beers to Paris. Paris is a city that, I think has a lot of things in common with London. I'm sure there's areas in Paris that are very similar to Brixton. And I think, French beer drinkers have got a taste for craft beer, which is fantastic for us. And thank you for trying the beers. This is how we used to bottle our beers. So we have a canning line now, you're trying the cans, but before that, we used to have this machine, which was a bit like a dairy cow, so a bit like milking a cow. So one bottle, and then you take it off. This is where you put the cap. Then you have to put the label. So we did about 500,000 bottles this way. Yeah. And then we bought an automated bottling line, and now we have an automated canning line. And this is me leaving my real job and making our first delivery to our first customer. And we're very lucky in Brixton. There's a lot of bars and restaurants very close to the brewery. And when we opened the brewery, we didn't have a car, we didn't have a van, we didn't even have a trolley. This is, we borrowed this trolley from the neighbor next door, and we pushed it up the road. And for about 1 year, we made all of our deliveries like that. Yeah. And then Libby, my wife, started helping with deliveries. She'd have beer in the back, kids in the front, and we would race around delivering the beer and just about made it work. When I look back, I'm not sure how, but we made it work. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Brixton, the place, because as I said at the beginning, that is the inspiration for the beers. And if you haven't visited Brixton, there's a few landmarks which are quite famous. And on the top left is a road called Electric Avenue. And the reason it's called Electric Avenue is it's the first road in London to have electric street lighting in the Victorian times. So that's why it's called Electric Avenue. But the place is very hectic, lots of people, there's a market, people are rushing around. And we name our IPA, our strongest IPA, which we don't have here today, called Electric IPA, because when you drink the beer, it's strong, it's assertive, it's robust, and it reminds you of the place. This is another famous road in Brixton called Cold Harbour Lane. I don't know if you recognize Invader. Do you know the French artist, Invader? Yeah, so this is one of his invasions. And again, this is the African fabric that you see has inspired our designs. Do you know this guy? Anyone? David Bowie. He was from Brixton. Yeah. So he's another famous person from Brixton. He lived there until he was 5, but we own him. And if you look at our low voltage session IPA that we have on the bar, you'll recognize the lightning bolt, the same colors. And that one was inspired by David Bowie. The reason being, when we released it, is when he died. Just by coincidence at the same time. So we thought this is a tribute to David Bowie. And actually he has an album called Low. So the name also is a tribute to David Bowie. But we didn't want to make it too obvious because we didn't want people to think, oh, you're making commercial gain from someone's demise. So we kept it quiet. The beer that you have on your table now, Atlantic. This is a pub on a road in Brixton called Atlantic Road. And that beer is named after Atlantic Road. The design on the labels, or on the can, is part of the railway line on that same road. And that road is famous for Brixton Market, where you see a lot of fresh fruit and produce. And we want the beer to taste very tropical. So if you try it, the hops that we use in that beer have a lot of tropical flavor. And that's the reason why, Electric is the strong, bitter, Atlantic is the tropical. So that when you drink the beer, it makes you think of the place that it's named after. We have another beer called Reliance Pale Ale, which is named after this arcade, Reliance Arcade. And this is just a local Brixton character, and we have a tap room. If you ever visit Brixton, please come and visit our tap room in the Railway Arches. You'll be able to try more beers, get to know us a bit better. The other ways that we have links to the local area is through community partnerships. Now, there's a lot of businesses in Brixton that have the same mentality as we do. Very community-minded. They want to support local businesses. They want to buy local products. And we try and work with them where possible. So on the left is a beer that we made with the local cinema, which was quite a strange collaboration because you don't normally mix beer and film watching together. But in Brixton, there's beer everywhere, and it's a big nighttime economy. So yeah, we made a beer with them, and instead of advertising the film on the front, they put the name of the beer. And that was very successful. Brixton's also really well known for its artistic community, and there's a lot of creative people, and Untranslation is a project that a local artist made to reflect or represent all the different businesses in Brixton. They chose a name from each of those businesses' countries that could not be translated into English. So this is actually nice that it's the French one. Do you know this word? Flâner? No? Yeah, so anyway, apparently that word cannot be translated into a different language. So we were the sponsor of this project. So we try and support local artists as well as local businesses. This was a really cool project. This is a building on Cold Harbour Lane. And this is a mural that was painted in the 1980s. Brixton's also famous for activism. And this was against nuclear weapons. And somewhere down here is Margaret Thatcher and Mikhail Gorbachev, I think. But it's actually been restored. And now it has Donald Trump and North Korean leader. But anyway, we made a beer to celebrate this mural. And it's a sour beer. So we thought the name of the mural, Nuclear Dawn, would work really well with a sour beer style. So this is a beer that we made with, if you follow UK craft beer, there's a brewery called Duration, and they are based in Brixton as well. So we made a collaboration with them, put the mural on the label, raised money to help restore the mural. That was a really cool one. So let's talk about Brixton Brewery today. You've seen the history. This is our new brewery. These are our tanks. So the old tanks would hold 1,000 litres. These ones hold 10,000. So we've taken a big step up, which is allowing us to bring our beer to new drinkers in France. And it's also important that if we represent Brixton, the area, we want to do it with really good quality beers. You know, we don't want you to think badly of the area because the beer isn't great quality. So this was really important for us as well as an investment to ensure that the quality of our beer keeps improving. And I'm really happy with the beers today. They're all tasting great. And this is part of our commitment, you know, to the area as well. You know, we feel like if we want to represent in the best light, then we have to keep investing. So, but at the same time, the beers haven't changed. They're still unfiltered, still unpasteurized, vegan, and we're using the same quality ingredients that we did before. In fact, we're using better ingredients because now that we're bigger, we can source better quality ingredients. So, you know, we're always trying to make sure the beers improve year after year after year, but at the same time, we want the beers to be balanced and drinkable. So I think all of the beers, or I hope all the beers that you try, you know, are nice and drinkable, not too extreme, not too, you know, divisive or polarizing. Because that's the other thing that we want Brixton Brewery to be known for is, you know, very reliable, very interesting, and very varied beers. But you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a really good quality beer. if you've tried the beers today, we haven't had the outfoxed on yet, but if you go back to our stand, hopefully one of the kegs is finished and we'll have that on. Now this is a beer that I thought would go quite well today, or in France, because it's in a more Belgian style. Now most of our beers are in the pale ale, hoppy pale ale style, but this beer is less about hops, more about the malts, so the color and the flavor, and also the yeast. So we use a Belgian style yeast. So try that one. This is quite a extreme beer, quite unbalanced, very, very, very hazy. More like fruit juice than a traditional beer, but a very, very popular style, and one that people are going crazy for in the UK at the moment, and hopefully France will follow suit. All about the hops. Atlantic is the beer that you're drinking now, one of our core range. And I said earlier, it's supposed to give you a taste of Brixton Market. So when you see in Brixton Market, you see the kind of tropical fruits that the beer tastes of. So pineapple, mango, passion fruit. And if you're interested in the detail on any of the beer, it's on this slide, also on our website. Low Voltage, another beer. And when we make an IPA, we try and make the IPA with a nice balance of malt character and hop flavor as well. So you'll see it's a little bit maltier than the Atlantic American Pale Ale. And someone was saying to me, it has a lot of body, but it has quite a low bitterness, low alcohol. And the way that we do that is we use oats, avoine. So we put a lot of oats in the beer, and it adds sugars that the yeast doesn't ferment, and therefore the beer has a fuller mouthfeel, more satisfying. And this is just a nice little slide to conclude with, because at the beginning when we started the brewery, we said, we want to make it our mission to put Brixton on the map for great beer. And it's taken 5 years to build the new brewery, and we feel like that journey's just beginning. As I said, it's our first time in France. These are some of our brewers having lunch outside the brewery. This is the railway arch, so please come and visit. This bunting was what we were putting up in the ladder in the first picture. And that was sewn by Mike's wife. And then you'll notice that we use the lightning bolt a lot. So in a lot of our glasses, our bar runners, our tap handle is all about the lightning bolt. So when you see the lightning bolt or the B, that's your signal to order that beer, because that's going to be one of our beers. And you know, I really hope that you've learned a little bit about the brewery. Please ask any questions. I won't be able to hear you, but please come to the stand, ask any questions, and please visit us in London. And I think you'll be seeing our beer around a few bars in Paris over the next month or so. And thank you for listening. Cheers. Cheers.
We have sometimes if someone wants to ask a question. Where's the question? And the second one.
Hi, Jazz. Great speech. Thank you very much. Just a question in terms of the history. What was the turning point where you and the co-founders said to yourself, we're quitting the jobs and we're making this a big thing? Because obviously you see like we did 40 litres of beer and we had a small little hoo-ha. When was the turning point that it was like, this is a real business, we're going full forward, rather than this is a bit of a laugh?
I think it helped that I was quite unhappy in my job. So you need that kind of negative energy to turn into a positive energy. And I was quite fortunate that I had that. I also had a very supportive wife, which made a big difference. And it wasn't actually until last year that Mike quit his job. So he stayed, so I was running the brewery for the first 5 years. Mike was doing work on the brewery, but he had a day job as well. And before I quit my job, the brewery started, and then I was made redundant, which was like perfect because that paid for me for like a year while the brewery wasn't making any money. But I think we felt a sense of urgency is the real answer. We could see in London there were breweries opening everywhere and they were expanding and expanding. And we thought, if we don't do this now, that window of opportunity will close, or not only that, someone else will open Brixton Brewery and then we've got a real problem. So those are the reasons.
What's the story about the little fox in a brewery?
That is a good question. I should have told you about that. The reason that beer outfoxed. So, the reason it's called outfoxed is in the brewery, there's a railway line at the back and you get a lot of foxes. And I guess we left a door open and we came in one day and the whole brewery had been completely turned upside down, like paper everywhere, just a complete mess. And we're like, what the hell's going on? And we could smell this interesting aroma as well. So the fox had come in, destroyed everything, and then, marked its territory. And so we cleared up the brewery. We didn't think anything of it. This was on a Friday. Then we came back again on Monday, and the same thing. And we're like, what the hell's going on? Because we'd looked everywhere for this fox, and we couldn't find it. And then we found it hiding in a corner on the roof. And we chased it out. And at the same time we were making this beer and we just thought, yeah, why not? So that fox outfoxed us.
Question? Maybe I have a question, but it's more like technical questions. It's about the future of Brixton with the main subject in the UK now about the Brexit and Brexit with no deal. So how do you feel about that? Did you think maybe of a future with Brexit with no deal, or did you think about next steps?
We have thought about it, but the honest answer is no one knows what the hell's going on. So we have some stock of beer in Paris or in France, and we hope to continue sending beer to France without any restrictions or tariffs, but no one really knows what's going to happen. So it is a concern. But I have faith in the politicians. I don't know why, but I think it's a bit of a knife edge, the negotiations. But hopefully we'll find a deal that means we can export, the European Union can import into the UK. So we do have lots more important things to worry about than that, though. So we don't dwell on it.
Okay, thanks. Question? Question? So I think we're done.
Thank you.
We're done.
Cheers.
Thank you. Et donc vous pouvez retrouver Jazz au stand Brixton, the booth. Merci.